Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is BB and today I'm going to be talking about Dead by Daylight, which is a video game I absolutely adore and I've been playing it since 2019. I've got nearly 5,000 hours in the game. Not as many as most people who play the game, but it's enough to have a decent opinion on one of my favourite perks in the game, and that is Distortion. So what is Distortion? Distortion is a perk by Jeff and it hides your aura from the killer whenever the killer is using an aura read perk themselves, and it hides you for 10 seconds so you don't get seen to the killer. They don't see where you are, where you're moving, and you only get 3 stacks. But they can be regenerated if you're within the killer's terror radius, and also can be triggered whilst you're in chase with the killer. Now, if you are on Twitter and you are playing Dead by Daylight and you like to keep up with the latest news, info and content creators on the platform, you will have probably come across the big drama which is around this perk about how OP it is, and killers are just hating it and wanting it to be super nerfed to the point where we don't use it. However, in Dead by Daylight, there are a bunch of perks that show the aura of survivors, and there's only one for survivors to counter all of that. Also, on top of that, there is add-ons which also show auras. Now, the whole point of playing Dead by Daylight is to do gens and escape the trial, avoid the killer. For killer, it's to stop the gens being progressed so the gates don't open, and to kill the survivors, sacrifice them to the entity. Now, when I played back in 2019, 2020, when it was first coming out, we didn't have a lot of aura read perks. We mostly feared Bubba's barbecue and chili perk, which revealed the aura of survivors who are more than 40 meters away from a hooked survivor. And maybe the Wraiths as well, which is an add-on where when he's cloaked within 12 meters or something, like, he can see the aura of a survivor. Now, people weren't really using Distortion much back then, but they're using it more so now because there is just far too many aura reading abilities for killer. When I played back then, I thought that the idea was you were supposed to hide and seek with the survivors, and then when you find them, it's a cat and mouse. It's a mind game. It's a, can I mind game you on this loop? Can I catch you out in the open? Can I catch you off guard and jump scare you? But now DBD feels really competitive, and it's become more of a, I need to see where everyone is at all times because it's too difficult to find survivors, because there's now a few more extra stealth elements as well as gen rushing, and as well as just people getting better at looping killers for a longer duration of time. But for some reason, the most fun part of the game, which was the hunting, tracking, and then chasing, that seems to have now disappeared from what made the game a lot more fun. You will find a lot of killers take serious problem with the one perk that has to be regenerated over time because they said the 3 stacks. So what happens if they nerf this perk? Now, if you are in the DBD universe and you know a lot of content creators, one of the biggest ones, and someone who really got me into the game, and I'm sad to say it because I absolutely adore him, and that's Otstava. I watched Otstava's video, and I am someone who sadly has to disagree with his opinion on what he thinks should happen with the perk compared to its current state. He thinks it should become a team perk, and we should lose everything we have with the perk currently. We have no regeneration on it, and it's shared between the whole entire group, so our aura only gets hidden once if only one person brings the perk to the trial. Now, I just don't think this is a big issue as it should been. I have absolutely ranted about it on my Twitch channel, and I'll put that clip in shortly after this. But for my love letter for Distortion, all I know is that I adore it so much because what it does for me is that it makes me feel like I'm playing Dead by Daylight the way it should have been a few years back, when there wasn't too much aura read going on. We didn't have very OP perks like the new Vecna one, where any item that's depleted gets dropped automatically and your aura is instantly revealed for infinite time. It's just until you pick up that item, or as well as picking up items from chests. It's any item that's on the floor. So killers are also bringing Franklins, so items can get dropped anywhere around the map when they get hit, and survivors are going to forget where those items are. So it's a continuous aura read. If you're running that plus like nurses calling and just any other aura read, it's very OP, and survivors, they're just annoyed that they're always getting found without the sort of secrecy and the hunt and the thrill of the chase. It's kind of like you already know where someone is, you know exactly where they're going, you can immediately get to them. It takes away that initial cat and mouse. I feel sorry for survivors who are genuinely having a really fun time in the game, and we're now put under this bracket of, well, if you use Distortion, you're a baby survivor, you are too bad at the game, you shouldn't play the game, and you're just really, really bad making it difficult for killers. You just want to hide and walk around the corners of the map and never help your teammates. Well, this was never a problem until we started having more aura perks and more aura add-ons. So to say that the majority of users who use Distortion are babies and too scared to get involved, don't want to get in chase, and the stuff that I've read on Twitter is really sad, and this is a video game that we're all supposed to absolutely love and enjoy, and the fact that we're talking about a perk that is kind of low tier, it's been pushed up now, it's a more people are looking at it perk because it has such a massive counter ability to killers who just don't want to hunt and track survivors a bit more efficiently. When I played Killer, and I still play Killer to this day, one of my biggest cues is I will look for crows that have been disturbed in the distance. That is a massive cue because when survivors are confident you're not nearby, they are running around the map. So it's a massive cue. You can run other perks like Spies where the actual crows that get disturbed give you an alert. There's other ways of tracking. There's hearing. Turn your audio up. Hear for breathing from survivors who have recently ran and stopped to take a breather. Listen to footsteps, look for gens. Also play Survivor. Where would you go if you were a survivor and you knew a killer was on the way? Walk around a tree, because the amount of times that I've hid behind a rock or a tree right next to the killer and they've just looked at the gen, can't see scratch marks and go, oh, they must have ran on the other side of the map. This is why I need aura reveals. It's like, use natural instinct, look around an area, spend an extra 3 seconds. There's just too many aura revealing perks, and there's only one perk for survivor out of the hundreds that there are. There's one that counters the read, but it's not permanent. You have to regain stacks. My personal opinion, if you were going to change, still stay you, but maybe change the way that the tokens are regained during the trial. Distortion should really encourage is for those people having their aura hidden to get involved with the killer. And I didn't say this in my big rant that you're probably going to see after this, but if I was to make a change, it wouldn't be what Otstava said or any other person who's trying to make it a completely different perk to have no value. I would say the only way that you would regain those aura stacks for you is if you are in chase with the killer, which means you would have to try and get better at chases to extend your chase to the point where you've earned another token to then hide your aura later in the trial, because you're most likely going to get downed whilst you're in a chase, It's very rare for people to escape chases. So to make it a bit more difficult to regain tokens other than just being near the killer and in their terror radius, I just feel like that's the better way to counter it. It would force those survivors to come out of hiding, or the people that are talking about the very select small group that hide and walk around the map and don't want to get found and don't help. But if they made that simple change, it would then stop the angry Twitter DBD community and players of thinking that this perk is super OP to counter every killer aura reading perk. It's so simple, a little change like that, because even I find I gain stacks back a bit too quick, but I'm not a player who sits on gens the entire trial and is afraid to get involved with the killer. It's got nothing to do with having my aura hidden and the killer never finding me, because there is many a time where I've started the trial and I give the call out, it's lethal pursuer, guys. Our aura's getting red for X amount of seconds, and then immediately I find myself running into the killer. So really, I've wasted that call out for myself getting hidden, because I will just run into the killer. And it's just things like that, which is just, you've got to remember, it's not a perk that permanently hides you. It's not a perk that permanently says you're never going to get downed or help out your team. I think that's a very, very small argument which doesn't make any sense for this perk or for any of the player base. And a lot of people probably aren't on Twitter and probably don't care to talk about it, but for someone who uses it religiously as I do for for callouts and for information build. It's so useful, and a lot of the time it's not down to what perks you have, it's just your playstyle. I've known scared survivors who are running meta builds, copying people who are in the top MMR, copying these big content creators, all because they think those perks are going to carry them and get them the win and help them escape. That's not the case. So it really is just down to the players that are playing and their play style, not the perks that they're carrying. I agree that there's far too many chaser perks for survivors that help them in chase, that give them second chances, and the gens still go too fast, and chasers are just the only way for the killer to really to pull back some control over the trial. Even with gen slowdown perks, survivors will find a way to still rush and get them done. But the biggest thing, and I don't know if it's because of Distortion or if it's just because we've got an anniversary event currently in Dead by Daylight at the moment, it's their 8th anniversary, but I found every single trial that I got into, every killer, no matter who it was, every single killer was tunneling, camping, slugging, and effing people on the floor, being very toxic at the start of the trial at 5 gens. Unfortunately, the mindset nowadays is just, if you're running Distortion, that's cause for you to get tunneled, and for me to not play the trial route, and for me to grief you on the floor and give you abuse because you're running a perk that's very, very OP, when it's not. I am an absolute Distortion stan. I'm not the best looper. I love getting involved with the killers. If you watch my stream, you have evidence of how scared I get and how I scream around the map and asking for my teammates to help, just as a funny thing, not as like a this is sweaty, this is terrible. I want to have fun. I love getting involved, and I love having that information build and then using my own hook states to help out when I know I need to, or to just take over chase, or regardless. I play the trials outright, but what I don't like is the fact that we're trying to nerf perks that are so mediocre and they're not overpowered. I think the massive issue, gens are still getting done too quickly. Chases are getting longer because survivors are not only getting more experienced, but they're getting carried by a lot of chaser perks and second chance perks. Killers are having a tough time because they cannot control how quick the gens are going still, with all the perks and toolboxes and teamwork and comms as well. And also, it's hard to mind game with all these loops, and survivors having, again, chaser perks like windows of opportunity and dead hard for when they're injured, or decisive strike if you happen to have to tunnel someone to a second stage. It's getting harder, I think, for killers to track survivors, to efficiently hunt them, and to end chases less than 30 seconds. I've put many hours into this game. I've played it for a very, 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 very long time. We're in 2024. 2019 was a long time ago. People were playing this during lockdown. It was a massive thing for a lot of us, and to make friends, to just build a community on Twitch, and for it to now be this really awful competitive video game where I get anxious to even play killer. I think that's the biggest problem here. It's got nothing to do with these mediocre perks. It's massively to do with how many perks there are, the big buffs that come with them, and just how long it takes to do gens and how long chases are getting now. My personal opinion, I've said it for a long time, the whole perk system needs a massive overhaul. Perks should not be carrying survivors or killers through trials. They should be minute buffs. Some of them maybe come with minute debuffs, but the massive thing I've learned in games is the more time and experience in a game, the better you become at it, or at least the more knowledgeable you become. But if you've got perks that skip hours and hours of experience and knowledge, that's going to cause a problem in the long run. So if all these perks have got all these massive buffs, I would say the majority of perks have massive buffs. If they were all turned down a bit, there's a massive imbalance with the numbers and the maths and the percentages and the buffs. If it was all turned down quite a lot, the game would go back to becoming how good you are at mind gaming and on loops, and how efficient you are at map awareness and where the gens are and your teammates in healing, and just being more efficient that way. Everyone is different. Every player has a different play style, and I think we need to just simmer down, put the kettle on, and just enjoy Dead by Daylight for what it is, whilst it's still massively popular and still fun to play to this day. Thank you for listening, and here is my Twitch rant, and leave a comment, subscribe. Okay, bye! I'm passionate for my perks as well. Distortion and Desperate Measures are my babies, okay? They're my babies. They're my absolute babies. I love Distortion, and all the drama that's been talking about this perk. Starver now has brought it to light massively, and it's just, there's too much OP-ness and do you know what it is? It's the numbers. They're all wrong. Whoever is in charge of behaviour of doing all the numbers and the balancing, fire them. Because if things were like brought down to little buffs, people would start using other perks because all these OP and meta perks wouldn't be so great anymore. In this video, he did say the reason why people hate the perk is because people who use the perk hide the whole game and not help their teammates. That is incorrect though, because we don't. I'm a Distortion 100% user, and I do not purposely hide and not help anyone. If anything, I am super altruistic. I use it to my advantage. If I'm in comms, I will tell them what aura read perks the killer has or aura read add-on the killer has, because I can pick it up. But I will use it to my advantage, and sometimes I run into the killer, not always willingly, and I'm like, oh shit, that was a waste of Distortion. But that's the whole point. They're taking a very, very small aspect and going, this is the reason why. No, not every Distortion player is like that.
My.
Zilch. Also, this killer has Lethal Pursuer. There you go. This killer has Lethal Pursuer. I could give you that comm, Harry. I feel very sad that a perk that isn't even OP is now like being considered getting nerfed, or maybe it will, I don't know. Compared to old DBD, back then there wasn't many aura read perks or add-ons, and you didn't really need more than the stacks that they were originally there, because once you knew, and you could play around it. But now, because all these perks have continuous aura read, like Vecna's new perk, by the way, that's ridiculously OP. It's ridiculously OP. The reason why it's getting so mad about and people are getting fed up with is because there's so many aura reading perks and add-ons. And the thing is, Distortion, once you lose stacks, you actually have to get quite close to the killer to gain them back. Yeah, so you know new Vecna's perk. I've forgotten what it's called, but it's very OP. It will eat your Distortion stacks to the point where you probably no point, what I do now is if I've depleted an item or I find an item, I will pick it up and move it to the outskirts of the map. And not every survivor who runs Distortion is playing complete hide and seek and they refuse to be found. Once do you know what it reminds me of? Remember when people used to have stretch res, like they could look over walls and everything? If you add pretty much a lot of wall hacks into the game for both sides, well, mostly it's really for killer, right? But yeah, if you add that in for killer, the game doesn't become like a scary cat and mouse and really fun. If you continuously know where a survivor is behind a loop or behind a wall or everything, like it's fun in some aspect. But if you've got continuous, majority of the time aura read, and I've seen nurses use small maps and have a whole aura read build and add-ons, and again, not every player who plays this, that we're not JRM, we're not OTS, we're not, spooky loops. We are average players who are just playing to have fun. And I feel so passionate because I've loved the perk since it came out. I'm fed up of hearing everyone cry about it online and seeing it on Twitter, and it's just, it angers me because I just want one thing in this game that I can enjoy. I don't enjoy getting tunneled or all this new sweat business, and I don't enjoy all the hate online or on Steam and everything from games. I don't enjoy that I have to sweat hard in an event because everyone is taking it really seriously. Let me enjoy a perk at least. Please. Thanks. That's my love letter, and I will stand by it. It makes me mad that people take this game as serious as they do when it's not a serious game. It's meant to be what their initial statement was. It's a party survival horror asymmetrical game. If you're someone who's put a lot of hours into this game, like, how does it make you feel? Because at this point, if the game is getting to this stage and they're not going to give us a competitive game mode to get rid of those sweats, like, you take it so seriously and ruin the fun for a majority of players, like, for me it just feels like, fuck, have I really wasted so many hours on a game that's not how I enjoy it anymore?